I know you must be thinking that a woman my age shouldn't be hiding inside a closet like a mischievous child, but I was so excited about the idea of surprising my son Harry that I didn't think twice. He had just returned from a business trip, representing his father's company alone for the first time, and I wanted to see his face when he walked into the room and found me there with a cake I'd spent all afternoon preparing. It was his favorite cake since he was little, that chocolate cake with strawberry frosting I made every birthday. I spent 3 hours in the kitchen, testing the batter consistency, decorating it with fresh strawberries I'd bought early that morning at the farmer's market. Harry had always been my dedicated firstborn, the son who woke up early to help me around the house, who called every Sunday without fail, who brought flowers when he came for dinner. I remember when he was little and would wake me up on Saturdays, bringing me coffee in bed that he'd made himself, still crooked, but made with so much love. I was so proud of him. I'd tell my friends at the club about his professional achievements, about how responsible and caring he was. My husband John was proud too, so much so that he was preparing to gradually transition the company into our son's hands. He'd spend weekends teaching him the details of the business, introducing him to old suppliers, sharing secrets from decades of experience. It was any father's dream, seeing his son take over the family legacy with competence and love. That afternoon, as I squeezed myself between the old coats inside that closet, I felt my heart overflowing with maternal love. How silly of me, right? A 68-year-old woman playing hide and seek. But mothers never stop being mothers, no matter how many gray hairs appear or how many wrinkles mark their faces. We keep wanting to see that smile on our children's faces. We keep looking for ways to show affection, to create special moments. I heard the front door open. Those were his footsteps coming up the stairs. I immediately recognized that hurried walk. Harry had always been in a rush for everything. Since childhood, he'd run through the hallways of this house. I stifled a giggle inside the closet, holding the phone that dimly lit that cramped space. The faint light from the device showed the old clothes hanging, some I hadn't worn in years but kept out of attachment. I was going to wait for him to approach the bed, then I'd jump out yelling surprise. It would be funny to see his startled face, that expression he'd made since he was little when something unexpected happened. But then I heard another sound, his phone ringing. Harry answered on the first ring, and from his voice you could tell he was irritated, impatient. I thought it best to stay quiet and wait for him to finish the call. I didn't want to ruin my surprise by appearing in the middle of an important work conversation. I thought I'd wait a few more minutes. It would surely be quick. His voice sounded different. It had a harshness I didn't know, a rough tone I'd never heard before, coming from that mouth that had called me mommy so many times. Harry started talking, and every word that came out of his mouth seemed to come from a stranger. Not from my son, not from the boy I raised, not from the young man who cried in my arms when he lost his first girlfriend and said only, I could truly console him. He told the person on the other end of the line that he was tired of taking orders from this unbearable old woman. This old woman, me, his mother. I had to bite my lip hard to keep from making noise, to keep from letting out the sound of shock that rose up my throat like bitter bile. My mouth went instantly dry. He kept talking, his voice full of impatience and contempt. He said my husband, his father, needed to hurry up and transfer the company to his name, that he was sick of waiting, sick of pretending he cared, sick of having to please his parents to get what was his by right. By right? What right was this that I was unaware of? John built that company from nothing, started selling products door to door, faced years of hardship before success came, and Harry talked as if he owned something he hadn't helped build. Each syllable of those words entered my ears and went down heavy, very heavy, as if I were swallowing sharp stones that tore my throat from the inside. I stayed completely still inside that dark closet. My entire body was rigid, muscles tense as if they'd turned to stone. The darkness that before seemed cozy, even fun, now suffocated me. The smell of mothballs and old wood made me nauseous. I wanted to get out of there, wanted to shake my son by the shoulders and ask who this man was talking with, such cruelty about his own mother. But my body simply wouldn't obey. My legs were weak, wobbly, seemed unable to support me. My arms were heavy, and there was something stuck in my throat that wouldn't let me breathe properly. Each attempt to draw air seemed insufficient. Harry laughed. A cynical laugh, as he said that soon, very soon, all of it would be his and he could do whatever he pleased. That he'd put his mother in a nursing home if necessary, because she was nothing but a nuisance who was always butting into everything. A nuisance. He called me a nuisance. Me, who gave up my own career to raise him, who economized on everything to give him the best education possible. Had I heard correctly? Was it a nightmare? One of those bad dreams that made me wake up startled? But it wasn't. I was wide awake, fully conscious, trapped in that cramped closet that now felt like a cage. Suddenly I realized that maybe I had never truly known my own son. That this caring, attentive, dedicated man had perhaps always been just a well-constructed facade over the years. How many Sundays had he come to dinner here, thinking only about securing his inheritance? How many flowers had he brought just to maintain the false kindness? How many hugs were fake? The pain of this discovery was almost unbearable. Then I heard something else. Footsteps in the hallway. Slower, more tired footsteps. I knew these footsteps better than I knew my own. They were my husband John's footsteps. And from the way he was walking, you could tell he had heard everything too. My breath caught in my lungs. Harry was still on the phone, completely oblivious to his father's presence so close by. He continued pouring out his ingratitude, talking about how he would modernize the company as soon as he took over, fire the old employees his father insisted on keeping out of loyalty and gratitude, sell some properties that didn't generate enough profit according to his calculations. He talked about our life, about my husband's decades of work, as if they were just numbers on an Excel spreadsheet, as if there weren't sweat, tears, sleepless nights, enormous sacrifices involved in every difficult decision John made over 40 years building that business. How many times had I seen my husband come home exhausted, worried about the bills, but always finding strength to play with the children? How many birthdays had he missed? How many weekends had he worked to ensure our comfort? And our son reduced all of it to immediate profit strategies. The bedroom door opened completely. I heard the familiar creak of the hinges that had needed oil for months. Harry fell silent immediately. The silence was unexpected, as if someone had cut the sound from the environment. There was a long silence, so heavy it seemed to occupy all the space in the room and suck out the available air. Then my husband's voice emerged. He wasn't yelling. John was never one to yell, not even in the most difficult moments of our life. But there was something in that low, controlled, measured tone that was even more frightening than any desperate shout. He asked who Harry was talking to. My son stammered, his voice failing for the first time. He tried to make up a weak excuse, said it was a work colleague, that they were joking around, that it wasn't anything like it seemed, that his father had misunderstood. But John wasn't a fool. He hadn't gotten where he was by being naive. He had heard everything clearly, every malicious word, every miserable plan. He said so. He said he had heard every word, every demonstration of contempt for the mother and father who had given him everything. Harry's voice changed then. The mask fell off completely, shattering on the floor. He no longer tried to pretend, didn't apologize, didn't cry repentantly as a person with a conscience would. Instead, his voice became serious, even more frightening in its raw honesty. He said he was just being practical, that he was just thinking about his future, that there was nothing wrong with wanting to take command of the family business, that we were the old and outdated parents who didn't understand how the world worked today, that we were too old for modern business. He said all this with an arrogance that left me heartbroken. John responded with a devastating calm that comes from a disappointment so deep it surpasses anger. He said Harry was right about one thing, that it really was time for a change to happen in the company and in the family. but it wouldn't be the change my son was eagerly expecting. He informed Harry that he was fired from the company as of that exact moment, that he had until the end of the day to collect his personal belongings from the office and return the keys, corporate cards, and any other items that belonged to the company. And more, that he had 1 week to move out of the house. Our house, where he lived rent-free while pretending to save for his own apartment, but spending fortunes on trips and expensive restaurants. Harry exploded then. He started yelling, his voice coming out uncontrolled, saying this was unfair, that he had a right to that company for being his son, that he had worked hard for years and deserved recognition. Worked hard? He arrived late, left early, spent half the time on his phone. John simply said, with that firm voice that admitted no argument, that working at a company didn't guarantee inheritance rights to anyone, much less to someone who treated his own parents as disposable obstacles on the path to success. That a son who coldly planned to put his own mother in a nursing home against her will didn't deserve to inherit absolutely anything from the family he so despised. It was then that my husband walked to the closet and opened the door. Light suddenly invaded my hiding place, making me blink several times. His eyes met mine. There was sadness in that look, a deep and ancient sadness that mirrored my own pain. But there was also determination, the same determination that made him build an empire from nothing. He extended his hand to help me out of there, and I held it as if it were a lifeline. My legs were numb from being in that uncomfortable position for so long, but that wasn't why I was trembling as I stood up. Harry turned white when he saw me emerge from the closet. His face lost all color. His eyes widened. For the first time that entire afternoon, I saw genuine fear stamped on his face. He tried to talk to me, tried to explain that I hadn't understood, that he could explain everything, but I simply couldn't look at him. I averted my eyes and left the room supported by my husband's arm, leaving my son behind calling out to me. In the following days, Harry tried to apologize countless times. He sent expensive flowers, long messages, showed up at the door begging to talk. But something inside me had broken in a way that I didn't know if it could ever be fixed. I'm still not ready to forgive him,